Okay. Okay. So today I am in MDI 001. I am combining units 4 and 5, which is demographic imperatives and economic determinants. I combine these two because there is a lot of synergy between how it works, and so I thought it will make more sense rather than doing it separately. A quick recap on the migration that we have talked in block one, where we did some, concepts. Migration is permanent or semi-permanent change caused by various factors. These are a way, we look at tying back to what we did in the last few weeks. It also helps one revise and remember concepts. In international migration, phenomena has been explained by an interdisciplinary perspective. We have talked about the fact that migration and diaspora are both interdisciplinary subjects, and that is why this phenomena can be explained. There are various theories of international migration, which includes neoclassical, neo economic, segmented, historical, social capital, human agency approach. One can go into the various units to check this out. Then we looked at transnationalism and globalization. Transnationalism denotes transcending strict distinction of national boundaries. Globalization implies development of increasing integrated global order. Both of them underlie a free flow of ideas, capital, people, and complement each other. That's why they are generally talked in the same breath. Then we looked at defining, the fact that transnationalism challenges homogenization, led to repositioning of states. So we also looked at how these various factors parallelly operate and how there's a negotiation between state and non-state or people who travel, who migrate, and diasporas. Translation affects diverse areas of international governance, including interstate politics, foreign policy, social values, cultural construct. Anything which affects or happens within the boundaries of a nation state can impact diasporas, and anything which happens in the diasporas can impact national politics and the state. Nationalism, international security, international organization. We looked at the widely held definition of globalization as a widening, intensifying, speeding up, and growing impact of worldwide connectedness. And we know today this connectedness is both in terms of transport and in terms of communication. Anything or everything which happens anywhere is immediately beamed to homes across the world. Three main types of globalization we read about: economic, cultural, and political. And all these three are again interrelated. So let's look at the objectives of Unit 4, which is, and then subsequently we'll come to the objectives of Unit 5. Understand the demographic features of international migration and impact. In fact, in this particular unit, there is a sub section on Indian diasporas, which I'm not going to cover because Indian diasporas are there in many other units in various forms. So I have left it and I've just looked at the demographic imperatives. So let's look at the background to it. About 1 billion people have been added to the global population. Migration is an outcome on the risk. So understand one thing: the modern human being evolved out of Africa. All human beings today across the world are basically come from the migration of that evolved human being from out of Africa. So all population which led people to migrate. Migration is sorry, the net. What happened? Why did it reset? Can guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you,
Yes,
but
sir.
Are you able to hear me?
yes, Abhay.
Yes, sir. Your voice is clear.
Are you able to hear me?
Abhay, you can go out and come in again. Maybe your that mic is not working.
Are you able to hear me, guys? Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't know why it suddenly reset it. So let me start.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. I can hear you. I can hear
Okay,
you.
then no problem.
There was something which happened. Maybe Sada, you want to restart that streaming?
No. Streaming is on.
Is on. Okay. Sorry. So for some reason, it automatically restarted. The Zoom restarted. Okay. So we were talking about migration is not uniform across the world. It can happen due to various factors. We looked at what are the various factors it can go through. Then also the fact there are 281 million people living in a country other than their country of birth since 2020. So obviously there is more mixing happening around, and as I keep repeating it, the story of human beings is a story of migration. People have been constantly migrating. Population Development Bureau projects number of international migrants to be over 400 million by 2050. Now these are estimates. Actual number of people nobody knows. These are estimates based on some sampling or otherwise. And for example, there is this chart in terms of percentage expressing intent to move abroad. Now, again, remember these are estimates based on sampling. If a sampling is not correct, then inevitably the estimates can go awry. So college education people less, and if you see the way the less than college education people are looking at migrating from 2008 to 2017. So it's an old graph. Things, especially COVID, and with the advent of digital media, obviously migration might have increased or might have decreased. Migration Report 2020 states that the largest corridors tend to be from developing countries to larger economies, such as United States. Mind you, it does not say developed countries. It says to larger economies, such that those of United States, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Germany. So obviously, it is very clear that these corridors are of movement of labor. And if it is movement of labor, there is a large economic reason behind this migration. Large corridors also reflect protracted conflict and related displacement. And for some reason, there are conflicts which are happening across the world. Again, we looked at the fact that, irrespective of the fact that after two world wars, human beings realized the fact that wars are not a solution, yet wars seem to continue, and which lead to major displacement and migration. Then, of course, the COVID-19 impacted work cultures, intensifying of digitization, potential for greater automation of work around the world. That is likely to affect key labor migration corridors. So there is this major, tumult which is happening in the world in terms of how the economy is moving, how the labor is moving. There are new ways of using labor. In fact, in MDI 007 and MDI 008, we talk about how there are changes in terms of labor, there are changes in terms of production processes, which leads to migration. There's a complex demographic change is happening in human mobility. So there is a whole tumult which is happening in terms of how and why people are migrating. Then, on top of that, the economic, political, and military power has radically shifted. No longer it is a unipolar world or a bipolar world. Power now more evenly distributed international system. Core human values have been challenged. So you see, there is so much of things which are happening, and parallelly, very interesting things are happening in terms of climate change. So I was seeing the fact that for the first time in, let's say, 15 years or there has been snowfall in New Orleans. The whole east coast of United States has been snowed out. Florida is receiving snow. Yesterday, I was reading about this major typhoon hitting British Isles and Scotland. So obviously, climate change is real and happening, and which will lead to a major movement of people. Three important dynamics that are significant in demography of global migration corridors, south-north migration, aging population, feminization of migration. Inevitably, everything leads to or links to everything else. Now, if let's say the birth rate falls, it leads to aging of population. If the population does not, duplicate or replicate, then there is an aging of population. So global migration corridors divided into global political economy that also impacts international migration. Flow of migration is characterized by two giant corridors, global south and global north. And north and south are not geographical terms, but grouping of countries along socio-economic and political characteristics. Inevitably, people are moving from lower social economic countries to higher socio-economic countries. Because as we talked about earlier, everybody wants better. What is better is a relative term, yet everybody wants better, what they perceive as better. Though there is a migration within south-south and north-north corridor, the nature differs as compared to south-north migration. So it's not, and more of the time, also we will see in MDI 003 that we feel that always the migration is south to north in terms of, the way socioeconomic lower to higher. But there is also a reverse migration from north to south. We will see that in MDI 003. Not so much as the south to north. Historically, global south represent high population, low productivity. Hence, unemployment, lack of productive employment drive people to move to the other side of the globe. The same happens in internal migration. So if you see India, there is a migration which happens from the rural areas into urban areas, again, because of high population in the rural areas, because of low productivity in the rural areas, because the lack of employment opportunities in the rural areas, people migrate to cities. Similarly, they will migrate out of India in terms of employment opportunities, in terms of finding out new opportunities. Many of the global south countries have younger working population as terms of global north. So if you see today, India has a demographic dividend. We have a much lower age population, much more people in the working age group. And if we are not able to provide employment or gainfully employ these people, inevitably these people will look at migration from rural to urban or from India to outside. So there is again a UN DESA chart 2019. Top 20 origin country, if you see, is India, Mexico, Russia. Whereas top 20 destination countries is US, Germany, Russia. Interestingly, Russia is both an origin as well as a destination country. And if you look at the fact, China is number 4 in terms of origin countries. This is a 2019 chart. And the interesting part is China is not a destination country at all. in the top 20. In fact, India is 20 top 20 destination countries, which is a very interesting thing. So this is a UN DESA chart. I'm sure there will be a later chart to this. Maybe I didn't search enough. So if you Google and search, you might get a chart which is for 2022, 23, or 24, one of these, in terms of origin and destination country. Second aspect, aging population. On one hand, migration reduces with age because younger people tend to migrate. It also creates a demand for migrant labor force, such as a demand on healthcare system. So once people are migrating and more people are coming in, obviously there's a demand on healthcare, and that is why healthcare becomes a very essential part of a democracy in terms of a welfare state. Two measures are taken to address the side of effect of aging population: increase of fertility, allow immigration. Now, unfortunately, you cannot increase fertility, because inevitably we've also found out that as people become more educated, as people look at better life or lifestyle, they would reduce the number of children they would have. We have research has shown that illiterate people or people with less education seem to have more children than educated people. And then secondly, with better healthcare, the number of children are less, because inevitably people, when they find there is poor healthcare, they tend to have more children. So the second then thing is to allow immigration. Now, we have also to look at immigration, then brings in other political problems, what we are seeing in the world today. Global South has relatively younger population, migrate to global North. And these migrants are not only high-end workers, but also caregivers for elderly, housemaids, and many other low-skilled areas. With aging population and less people in the workforce in global North, where do you get the workforce? So today, irrespective of the fact that there is this politics against immigrants, the whole US economy is working on immigrants, because there is an aging population. Europe again has an aging population. They need immigrants to do various kinds of jobs for them, because there's a high aging population. Aging population also affects the global economy, because growth deaccelerates, social security systems becomes fiscally unstable, because inevitably the aging population is not able to contribute so much in the economy of the country. Obviously it requires healthcare system, obviously it requires social security system, and that's where a younger population is always better for a country. The result in change of saving, investment behavior, labor supply, aggregate demand, and supply responses. Also understand, aggregate demand reduces with aging population, because they don't require as much things as what a younger population would require. So there is a chart on aging population, again, economic and social affairs, population division. This is a 2017 chart which talks about 2100, 3.1 billion aged population. Now look at the stress which would be on states with this kind of an aging population, because you need healthcare providers, you need social security, you need healthcare infrastructure, and unless you are planning for this, it becomes very difficult to handle. Then the third aspect is feminization of migration. Composition of migration has been changing over the last 2 decades with the rise of service sector and international student migration. 1990 proportion of female migrants has increased in all regions except East Asia and Pacific. Earlier, female migration only happened with women accompanying their husbands or joining their husbands. So it was morely in terms of a family migration. For the first time now, women are migrating for jobs, for studies, So the whole nature of migration by women has changed. While in 2000 the male to female split was 50 to 49, in 2020 the split is 51.9 to 48% with male migrants and 135 million female migrants. Now this could also be because of COVID or things. Unique is that women as independent migrants have been increasing in proportion to migration due to marriage. So now you will see a lot of independent women are migrating for various reasons. So there is a chart I was able to get, again UN DESA. This is a 2020, and if you notice, globally 51.9 to 48.1 male to female, and if you see Asia, Asia is lower, and Latin America, the male migrant is more. Otherwise, if you see North America, Europe, Oceania, the female migrants are more than the male migrants. Even Africa, the male migrants are more. North America, Europe, and Oceania, the female migrants are more than the male migrants. So you can see if there is a 2024 chart and see if it is further increased. Okay, so let's look at the Unit 5 economic determinants in terms of objective, meaning, and concept of economic determinants shaping migrants' decision. And as we talked about earlier, economic determinants are one of the most important factors why people migrate. So let's look at the concept of economic determinants. So I was able to get this from Colgate University, US, a chart in terms of demographic and economic determinants of migration. Increase in income differentials across countries often lead to increase in migrant flows. So inevitably, if let's say the Gulf region or Saudi Arabia is paying more money for the same kind of work, Indians would like to go to Saudi Arabia, or Indians would like to go to Gulf. And that's why a lot of Indians are going to Gulf, because there's an income differential. Then once the people go, a migrant network comes into play. Strong migrant networks historically play a large role in enhancing migrant flows. And this is what typically happens. One person goes and establishes base, he or she then pulls other people. Tax and government transfer policies, for example, one of the factors why people are migrating to Europe is Europe has this welfare, healthcare, other social security system, which, let's say, India does not have. A lot of people or a lot of states in the global south do not have welfare measures, and Europe has this. For example, a simple thing like European universities do not have a tuition fee. So a lot of Indian students would like to go and study there because it's much cheaper. When the Ukraine-Russian war broke out, we suddenly realized the fact there were 20,000 students studying medicine in Ukraine. Now think about the fact, why could these students not study in India? Obviously, either there were no seats available, or the cost of education would have been much higher in India than what it was in Ukraine. Migration serves as a form of insurance for households. Remit earnings, macroeconomic conditions at home and abroad can affect flow of migrants. In the cons, migration costs. Remember, migration is not a simple thing. Besides change of culture and a whole change in which you are in an alien culture, there is a cost. The cost of making a passport, the cost of making a visa, the cost of buying a ticket, the cost of searching a job, etc., etc. Strict migration policy acts as a constraint in migration decisions. So today, with America, with the new president trying to deport illegal migration, there would be a reluctance of migrants to travel to US. Demographic factors such as age, education, marital status, language impacts a person's willingness to migrate. Worsening political environment conditions abroad or improving conditions at home can lead less to migration. So these are the various pros and cons in terms of demographic and economic determinants. Economic determinants, as we keep talking about, are major motivational determinants for people and families to leave their home country, are factors that have some economic aspect and dimensions related to it. So, economic determinants are one of the most important factors which lead to migration. For example, low agricultural income, agricultural unemployment are all regarded as major factors, which I typically talked about even within a country. From, for example, India, migration from rural to urban areas to more rich or dynamic areas with more job prospects. One of the reasons why people stay in slums, in such pathetic living conditions in an urban areas, is job prospects. They are able to get employment. They are able to remit money back home. Similarly, they move and leave their own country, home country, to go to a host country. Include improved potential for increased earning, income and wages, better employment opportunities, higher standard of living, more comfortable safety net, among others. So there are so many factors. This is not one factor. And anytime and every time, a news item or some scholar says this is the predominant factor, obviously there are other factors which are not looked at into consideration. It's a reductionist statement. Individuals, being rational human beings, make decisions based on their own self interest, maximize efficiency and earning. Now, again, these are also some amount of subjective decisions. The fact is, when I look at, let's say, I look at the fact that, a person is migrating into a country where the exchange rate is almost double. You have to look at a human being may not look at the decision, that the fact that there's a cost involved in adjusting to an alien culture. So sometimes this concept of individuals being rational actors comes into suspect in decisions. There might be other factors which may not look very rational. It might be more emotional. However, everybody in their best interest looks at maximizing efficiency and earning, and they frequently conduct cost benefit analysis prior to making migration decision. So there is a certain amount of cost benefit analysis. In that cost benefit analysis, possibly humans sometimes may overlook certain factors based on emotional considerations, but definitely every human being before making such a decision looks at cost benefit analysis. Undocumented migrants make up a large portion of migrant population, and the primary motivation is economic. So think about the fact, why would somebody leave a home and go outside? Obviously, there would be dire conditions, there could be political uncertainty, there could be a climate disaster, and that's the reason why people move. In turn, has a significant impact on a country's economic growth and development, leads to high. And it's also, research has proved the fact that migration increases economic growth of a country. So all this political rhetoric of migrants being a drain on a country is actually not correct. Because for a simple reason, when a person, you look at it, the fact, when people migrate from rural areas to urban areas, remember, every human being is an economic engine. He or she contributes products, so increases aggregate demand, pays taxes to the government on each product consumed. So obviously there's an economic goal. Remit money back home. Look at the movement of economy it does. Adds to development of human capital, and receiving nations account for significant portions of country's GDP, influenced by a lot of variety of micro and micro economic factors. We have also, research has shown that the money which is remitted back helps people improve their nutritional status, helps children get education. Stocks and flows of migrants, wage rates in destination and origin countries, economic opportunities in both origin and destination countries, inflation in both host and origin countries, exchange rate. Exchange rate becomes a very important factor. So, assuming the fact a person earns 1 rupee or a person earns $1, that $1 is equivalent to 86 rupees. So if a person goes to the US and is able to remit, let's say $100, that's 8,000 rupees, almost 9,000 rupees is remitting back home. Inflation in both host and origin countries, ability to transfer funds from home countries to host and from host to home are all macroeconomic impacts. So let's break it up and look at it, point-wise. Income differentials and imperfections in developing economies, increased household income and liquidity are most immediate and net benefits of migration. We have seen even internal migration, people who, labor who migrated from Orissa, Bihar, and UP into the southern states of Kerala or Tamil Nadu seem to have better nutritional status. They come and there is money which is remitted. They are constructing better houses, pakka houses. Their nutritional status go up, their educational status go up. Income disparity between home and host nation is a major factor in deciding whether or not to migrate. So for the same job, if you are getting and higher income with a better exchange rate in the Gulf, a labor would migrate to the Gulf. So there is this chart of push and pull factor. Push factors in economic poverty, low wages, high taxes, unemployment, overpopulation. Then there are non-economic factors. Then there is pull factors of economic demand for labor, high wages, generous welfare benefits, good healthcare and education system, strong economic growth, technology, low cost of living. Then there are non-economic. So non-economic is typically which would come in other factors, which would come in X factors, emotional, etc. Similarly, non-economic in terms of full factors would again determine because of other factors. When we look at cost benefit analysis, you look at the economic as well as non-economic factors. There are economic theories to explain migration. There is a dependence theories, Marxist perspective, world system theories. We'll look at these theories in other units, so it has not been elaborated out here. Migration as a result of So some of these theories talk about migration as a result of global capitalism, concerned about marginal. See, there are various consequences to migration besides improving economies or improving the economy of the person migrating or the family back home. Theorists have tried to explain marginalization in terms of a capitalist model, or about marginalization and displacement of rural populations around the world, caters to the requirement and interest of major multinational corporation and capitalists. So scholars have looked at migration in terms of various ways to explain. And dependency theories, Marxist perspectives, and world system theories typically talk about marginalization and how these populations are exploited. Then there is a dual labor market theory. Migration is mainly driven by permanent demand of cheap labor in developed countries that is often met by migrant labor from low and developing economies. To a certain extent, it is true for a simple reason, because developed countries or countries with higher economies do not have enough workforce. They pull people from the developing countries or countries which have a higher number of population, and then they are able to pay them cheap labor. If they were to take people from their own country in terms of labor, they would have to pay more. And remember, in capitalism, everybody is talking about making more profits. These jobs are often shunned by native workers due to social status, prestige issue, often undertaken by migrant workers from developing regions. So typically, you look at a city. A great way to look at a city is in a city. Look at most of the menial jobs. Who's doing most of the menial jobs? Most of the menial jobs are being done by migrants. They could be migrants from rural areas, they could be migrants from other countries. Similar with all countries. You look at US, you look at UK, you look at Europe, most of the regular jobs are being done by immigrants. Then there is this concept of deprivation. Migration is a result of relative deprivation. Migration is a choice. People's choice are influenced by the degree of pleasure or deprivation compared to community they belong to. Minimizing relative deprivation rather than maximization of absolute wealth drives migration. And again, how does one perceive deprivation? How does one perceive pleasure? Now, these are very subjective terms. So, for some people, for somebody, having a luxury car, not having a luxury car might be deprivation. For somebody to be able to afford a public transport could be deprivation. Migration is a risk and income diversification strategy utilized by rural households in low income countries. So, for example, if you look at India itself, inevitably in a household, there would be one child or one boy who would migrate into the city for work, whereas one child, one boy would remain back to tend to agriculture. That way, they are able to diversify in terms of maximizing, economy for the rural household. Aside from income gaps and inequality, imperfections in a variety of markets such as labor, capital, and insurance are important economic factors that influence migration decision. Residents of rich countries are supplied with unemployment insurance and benefits. Inhabitants of developing are rarely provided. So even these things matter. For example, I was looking at this story about this US athlete, US black athlete, who was in France during the Olympics. And in Europe, health benefits and dental benefits are a done thing, whereas in US they are not. Think about the fact, even in a developed country like US with such a big economy, there is no universal health care, whereas in Europe it is. So this athlete, when she traveled to France for the Olympics and won medals, she was able to get a dental job in France without any cost. And she had put out this social media post, the fact America should also have a universal health benefit, healthcare system. Now, the fact, if a country is able to offer a universal healthcare system in terms of medical healthcare, in terms of medical benefit, there would be migration to that country from various other countries. People would want that because inevitably people fall ill, healthcare is expensive, and if a country is able to provide a universal healthcare, people would migrate. Cost benefit analysis, as we talked about, everybody does that. Determines whether or not a member of the household will migrate. When making decisions, prospective migrants and their family conduct cost benefit analysis. Literature leads to a positive net return to migration. So that cost benefit analysis may not be on a piece of paper with a pen. Positives, negatives. It would most often be a chat over, let's say, a fireside or during food. There is a benefit to this, there is a loss to this, and this cost benefit. Every one of us does a cost benefit analysis in every decision that we make. Then there are migration costs. We most of the times tend to forget that there is a cost involved in migration. It's a significant predictor of migration. Poorest sections of society are sometimes denied migration because they cannot afford the cost. So there was this research and a news item about how migration leads to many families going into debt. In fact, a study was conducted by, I think, Punjab Agriculture University, which found that in Punjab, there was a very high debt among families because there was a major migration from Punjab happening, and which was leading families to go into debt, to selling their land, to enable their children to migrate. Various costs associated with migration, such as travel costs, fees related to migration, visa fees, resident permits, gain legal entry into both origin and housing costs, etc., etc. So there are multiple costs, and that's where it becomes, for poor households, it becomes a deterrent. That's why. That's why one of the theories says that when in fact your financial status becomes better, people will not stop migrating but will increase migration. Then there are taxes and government safety net. So look at the fact today a lot of high end digital companies from India migrated into the Middle East because there is zero tax. Then safety nets. If the government of a country gives a safety net, for example, a lot of businesses are operating from places like Cayman Islands or other places, which is a zero tax or protects, investments. So, companies open their corporate office out there. So, at the end of the day, it is always maximizing revenue, minimizing deprivation. Then social insurance schemes and program influencing migrant decision, better civil facilities, healthcare, opportunities for children's education, post-retirement benefits. People look at everything. Government transfers that are generous may attract migrants, since these programs are often termed as welfare magnets. So these are not out of the ordinary, but these are all which help families and individuals decide, when and how to migrate. Exchange rate becomes an important thing. Business cycles and unemployment. One of the primary macroeconomic issues that frequently overlooked in diaspora studies. So, as I said, a person goes to the US and earn and remits $100. That $100 is almost 9,000 rupees. Not directly observable determinant plays a significant impact in deciding and motivating individuals and family migration habits. So you go to Gulf and your exchange rate is better. Look at India Nepal migration. Indian rupee is better compared to Nepal. A lot of Nepali migrants come into India, do their uh, uh, get, get gainful employment and remit money back to Nepal. Direct impact on relative processes about purchasing power via remittance is frequently influenced by exchange rates. Strong currency in destination nation to origin countries such as the dollar will allow money earned abroad to be spent in home country. In fact, there are research as to how these migrants not only remit back money home, but they boost the host nation's economy because obviously they are spending there. High unemployment in origin countries operate as a push factor. Recession, economic crisis, and other events influence migration decisions. In economic situations of destination, migration is frequently prohibited or encouraged. So, if the Gulf is booming because of petroleum, there will be movement to Gulf. If Europe is offering welfare services and a chance to become a citizen of Europe, people will which is what happens. Now more and more, let's say, Keralites are moving to Europe rather than the Gulf, because in Gulf you can't get citizenship, whereas in Europe you can get citizenship. Economic determinants and immigration policy also. Immigration policies are big. So today with America and a new president playing an immigrant politics in terms of immigrant being bad, there would be a slowdown in terms of people looking at immigrating to the US. Individuals involved in various types of immigrations are national of the receiving countries, are return migration. Receiving country believes that migration is so only these two conditions would immigration happen. So people are coming back, or the receiving country wants immigrants to come in. If there is, a domestic politics which is against the immigration, then people will not look at migrating to that country. Political backlash against immigration in many countries is not economically rational. Now, this has been proved beyond doubt. There are various researches which has done identity politics. Besides identity politics, immigration is not economically rational, because a lot of these countries have aging population. There is not enough workforce. They need youthful people to do a lot of work, and this politics of identity politics or politics against immigration is not sustainable. The evidence strongly support immigration as overall a clear benefit to destination countries. Department of Political Economy at King George, London. There has been research done in various European countries. There have been research done in US. So there is this Newsweek article 2023. Immigrants' contribution to countries' economic. A 2020 report by IMF revealed that immigrants in advanced economies increase productivity and output in the short and medium terms. Immigrants added 2 trillion of US GDP in 2016 and 458.7 billion to state, local, and federal taxes. So any country and any politics which goes against immigrants actually is counterproductive to the capitalist model of the world. And yet, domestic politicians play on the immigrant card and so on and so forth. So, this is a negotiation which happens, which will continue to happen. As I said, there will be migration, will be a continuous phenomena. This identity politics and this anti-immigrant politics will continue to play, and there will be this negotiation. And there are multiple, if you Google, you'll come across multiple researches which talk about how immigrants help a nation's economy. So let's sum up. Migration is a complex issue. 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Contribution of migration to sustainable development, 10 out of 17 goals, contains targets and indicators that are relevant to migration or mobility. Mobility is a constant and a continuous phenomena. As the migration is a dynamic phenomenon, it responds to complex range of factors, includes geopolitical situation to the technological changes. Increase of global population, demand for scarce resources, aging population of the world, migration will constantly change, increasing cases of anti-immigration. See, again, the fact is, technology might do a lot of things, internet might do a lot of things, but if a person ages, caregiving cannot be done technologically. You need a person. A lot of places robots cannot still replace human beings. Therefore, it is very important to manage migration better for sustainable development. So this is a thing which politicians, countries, states need to understand. They do, possibly politics takes over, but nevertheless. So came across this article, Economics of Migration by Jonathan Portes, out of which I have quoted. He has done this study on the economic contribution of immigrants, why immigration is a win-win situation for everybody. There are some other references in both the units. Economics of Immigration Theory, Effects of International Migration on Well-being of Native Population in Europe, Economic Analysis of Immigration. So there are others also, and if you Google, you can come across many other articles. I think I have come to an end. Any questions? Let me switch on my video. Hi guys, any questions? So now maybe you can understand why I clubbed unit 4 and 5. because demographic imperatives and economic determinants obviously gel with each other, and they need to be talked about in the same breath. Guys, any questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, Anshika. Anshika, any question?
No, sir, not now.
Okay. Karan?
No, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Then in that case, let's call it a day.
Sir,
Ha, Anshika, bolo.
you said China is not the top 20 destination country. Why, sir?
I see. That was a chart which I picked out of UN DESA, Department of Economic and Social Activities. So inevitably, they would have, comprised this of, whatever data they are able to get. I don't know. Maybe possibly, if you Google search and say, why China is, see, possibly one of the reasons could be the language. Chinese is a very difficult language, and inevitably, if you do not know Chinese, possibly it is very difficult. Say, for example, America and the US, English seems to be one language which is a global language. So if you look at India also, irrespective of 22 national languages and all kinds of, English becomes a constant factor where you can travel the length of the breadth of the country with English. China possibly no. Anchika?
Yes, sir. Now I get it.
So it could be a language, but if you Google and find out, maybe tomorrow when we meet for the MDI 003 thing, you can tell me. Meanwhile, I'll also Google and figure it out. But I think it is primarily the language.
Yes, sir. Because Chinese is a really very difficult language. There
It's
was, I tried to learn the language, but I can't learn that
it
language.
it has got a lot of alphabets in it, and it needs certain amount of work to learn the language. So maybe
Yes, sir.
that's one of the reasons why it's not a destination country.
Yes, sir. Basically, they have the symbols which are quite difficult to learn. If they have
Correct.
the alphabets, it would be so easy to learn the language.
Correct.
That's why Japanese and Korean language is also considered to be difficult language.
Equally difficult. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So in that case, we'll call it a day. You have a wonderful evening and tomorrow, and we'll meet tomorrow at 5 o'clock for MDI 003, and we will be doing the African diaspora. Okay. Bye bye,
Okay.
guys.
Bye, sir.
Bye. Bye.
Abhay, you have another class at 7, na?
Sir, on Saturday there is only, this is the last class at 5.
No. We have actually one more class is rescheduled. I'll just check. Saturday,
Okay, sir.
in case that I'll just let you know in the WhatsApp. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, Asinka. You have been so sincere and participating. It is very good for us, you know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Karan.